Greetings, saludos. I'm Dr. Nivea Torres, Superintendent of the Connecticut Technical High School System, welcoming you to another edition of Tech Talk from the Media Production Studio A at Cheney Tech. Today's presentation, the Common Core State Standards, Implications for Teaching and Learning in the Connecticut Technical High Schools. Our key question today is, why have we transitioned to implementing the Common Core State Standards in the Connecticut Technical High School System? In the upcoming 2014-2015 school year, all of Connecticut's schools and districts will be assessed on the Common Core State Standards. These new standards have been described as being fewer, clear, and higher. The Connecticut State Board of Education adopted the Common Core State Standards, which have been recently renamed the Connecticut Core Standards in 2010, so that students would be adequately prepared for the new assessments. The impetus for this adoption is to prepare and graduate all of our high school students to be ready for college-level work. The core standards in English language arts and mathematics assess essential skills such as critical thinking, communication, and problem solving. The successful transition to the Common Core will provide a consistent and clear understanding of what students are expected to learn so that all stakeholders, including higher education leaders, our administrators, teachers, students, and parents, know what they need to do to help students better prepare for college and the workforce. The Connecticut Common Standards in English language arts and mathematics, as well as literacy in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects, are a set of research-based, globally competitive K-12 expectations. Today's Tech Talk will focus on the Common Core Standards in English language arts. Joining me today for this discussion are educators from 4 of our schools. First, let's welcome Kathy Burnside, General Department Head at Norwich Tech.
Thank you.
And Donna Rizzolo, General Department Head at Vinyl Tech. Thank you for joining me both.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the shifts in terms of implementing the Connecticut Core Standards. We hear the word rigor. What does rigor essentially mean in terms of implementing the standards?
There are 3 main shifts in the Common Core State Standards. The first one has to do with incorporating more nonfiction in addition to our literature. So we're going to be incorporating more nonfiction and informational text. The second one is that our students need to use textual evidence to support their answers. Instead of an opinion, we need textual evidence. We need them to study the text and be able to support their answers. And the third, and I think is the most interesting, is reading more complex text and academic vocabulary. So we're trying to build the rigor in 3 areas, the reading and the writing, with the more complex text and understanding the text enough that you can support your answers.
I think it would be helpful for our viewers to understand, what does this mean in terms of shifts in the classroom? Could you provide some specific examples?
Sure. One of the things that we are doing is we are having our students do close reading, which is taking part of the text and understanding it and digging deeper to find out the real meaning. At this point, we're trying to get, by the time the kids are in 12th grade, they should be reading 30% literature and 70% informational text and nonfiction, which is really good for the technical high school because we have the trade areas, which is nonfiction and informational text. So we're really ahead of the game as far as that's concerned. It is a big shift from CAPT. CAPT was your opinion. The Common Core State Standards say, we like your opinion, but we want to hear some facts and some textual evidence, and we want you to be able to read and understand text in order to come up with answers that we need. Also in the reading, more rigorous readings, we have the quantitative, the qualitative, and the considerations, which I really find interesting in the classroom. It's not about your grade equivalency, because you probably can read words, but what do you bring to the text? Your prior knowledge, your bias, your background. And so you have to take the quantitative, the qualitative, and the considerations, all three of those, in order to get rigorous text for the students.
That clarification is very helpful. Dr. Rizzola, let me make sure that I get this right. I want you to share with us the concept of read like a detective, act like a reporter. What does that mean for our students and our teachers?
Sure. At Vinyl Tech and throughout the tech system, we've adopted the phrase read like a detective, write like a reporter. And it certainly wasn't something we made up. It was actually, it's a fairly popular phrase that one of the architects actually of the Common Core came up with to really create an expression that would be discernible to students. So we've got our 3 shifts that we're going to move to using evidence from the text, that we are going to closely read the text, that we are going to read texts on grade level, and we are going to incorporate more nonfiction into literacy instruction. But how do we communicate that to students? What's that supposed to look like? What are the student behaviors? So again, we adopted the read like a detective and write like a reporter. What does it mean to read like a detective? What we say to the students is that, well, think about a detective. How does a detective behave? A detective is perceptive. He or she looks closely at the evidence to discern what may or may not have happened, just like we want students to pay close attention to texts. Detectives are committed. They don't give up when they haven't, well, these clues don't seem to be coming together. I'm done with this investigation. No, they stay with it until they feel that they've reached the conclusion that they need. That's what we want students to do. Stay with texts. Be perceptive. Stay with them a long time, because sometimes that's what it takes to figure out what a text is saying. And finally, a good detective is reflective. He or she is always asking questions as they're looking at the evidence. I wonder why this. If that happens, maybe this. They're thinking about cause and effect and making parallels and whatnot. These are the same things we want students to be doing when they're reading texts. So when you are a reader, read like a detective. And then the writer. When you are writing, write like a reporter. This is not your diary. This is a report that you are writing. How do reporters write? Well, they ground what they're saying in objective facts. And they are thorough. They are very audience-minded. They make sure they thoroughly explain things. This isn't personal writing for yourself. Keep your audience in mind. What is your audience going to need to know in order to understand this particular topic? So you need to be thorough. And finally, of course, all writers need to be skilled in the mechanics of writing. So we have created posters and little pinups throughout the school that we put up to remind kids that they need to read like detectives and write like reporters.
I think that's really a best practice that all teachers can certainly implement in their classroom as we support these instructional shifts. Let me ask you to share what types of specific professional learning activities have you been a part of that have helped you in terms of the implementation in this transition to the Common Core?
First of all, at Norwich Tech, I would say the most important thing for us is that our administration has made it a priority, which is very important. It's important to administration, it's important to our teachers, and it's important for our students. We've also had opportunities for professional development. I have done the Core Smart Module 1 training, which I think we're going to speak about later. And we, at Norwich Tech, the Common Core state standards are reflected in our lesson plans. And we make sure that our teachers are on top of that and that their classroom is Common Core oriented. We also work well with our colleagues. We trade ideas. We do individual research. We have a professional library in our school dedicated to Common Core where teachers can go to books, check them out, read, make copies, lesson plans. We've been immersed in it, and it's been a good feeling.
What about you, Dr. Rizzola?
Yeah, at Vinyl, we started the process, I would say, almost about 2 years ago. Prior to, as we know, there's been a huge proliferation in excellent support material on the Common Core that have really come about in the past, I'd even say 6 months. And they're wonderful resources. But when we started this process, we started about a good year and a half ago, And there wasn't much out there yet. So what I did with the teachers was I said, well, let's look at the actual document. Let's go to the primary source. So we started to look at the actual standards, and we worked from the text, the actual document, and we looked at what are these standards asking us to do as teachers. And what I asked my teachers to do was to first, what are some common themes we see that keep coming up? I didn't tell them what the shifts were yet. I wanted them to look at the standards and to discern for themselves what they thought the shifts were. So what were some of the common things that they saw coming up over and over again? Then the next question that I asked them was, what are you already doing? Because I thought it was really important to ground what the standards are asking us to do in what we're already doing. And that was a big relief to the teachers to see that a lot of this isn't new. It is a lot of the things, the best practices that we're already engaged in. And then, of course, the third question was, what are we not doing that we need to be doing? And then, as Kathy says, and what can we move away from? What can we drop? What don't we not need to be doing anymore? So that third question, and then Kathy's fourth, what don't we need to be doing anymore, I think are really important too. And that's where a lot of the change has happened. Okay, we know we're doing this. It aligns with the core. Let's keep doing it. But we're not doing this. And these are things that we're being asked to do. What do we need to do in order to make those things happen? So we added maybe one or two key transitions in our instruction and curriculum for this school year with regard to reading, writing, and researching. And we made these shifts across the board, 9 through 12, social studies, English, reading, and then I even invited my health and phys ed teachers into the equation. And, let's make these little tweaks in our instruction and curriculum, and let's see what happens. And we've been doing it, and I think everybody feels fairly successful, and they're using the language of the core. It's in their objectives. Everyone's talking a lot about close reading activities and creating them for the students and sharing with each other. The teachers are doing a lot of teaching each other how to delve deeper into text when you're with students. And I feel like it's been a great year. And of course, we'll reflect at the end of the year to see what's worked for us and what can we get rid of and what can we refine and what do we need to add next year to bring it to the next level.
It certainly sounds like you've done a lot of work in terms of reassuring folks as well that many of these shifts or little tweaks, as you describe, are things that are already in some cases taking place in the classroom. Because I think that when we talk about the Common Core, people feel that it's a complete paradigm shift from what we have been doing in the last couple of years. And certainly we have very talented teachers in our district who are doing a phenomenal job. It's just a matter of really understanding, as you describe, what are the standards asking us to do that might be different in the classroom. Let me ask you specifically, because you mentioned earlier the core SMART PD and training. What does that mean? What does that entail for you as general department heads and for teachers who might be participating in that?
Several teachers from schools were chosen to be coaches, and we are being sent to 5 days of training. We've only been to one, and it was on the instructional shifts. It's very interesting to hear someone else's take on it. They gave us ideas on how to implement that in our own schools. Very important, and it is different from CAP. It's different from what we've done in the past. But we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Some of the things that we've done before, we just put it in a different arrangement. For example, the question used to be, how do you feel about a certain character in a story? Well, instead of that being the main objective in your lesson now, maybe that's your schema activator, your schema. And then you go to the core evidence, the evidence in the text to support that. Which we're just rearranging things a little bit and putting emphasis on different things. And I think once we show teachers that, they're going to be much more relaxed about this change. I know we have 4 more days of it. I'm looking forward to it. So,
thank you for sharing your experience. Dr. Izzola, what about your reflections on the training?
Sure. I just want to add that the training is something that the state of Connecticut is doing. It's not just a CTHSS training, that it's a statewide training, and we're attending the training with teachers throughout the state of Connecticut from all the various municipalities and districts and whatnot. So it's something that the CTHS is sending representatives from each school to that. And I think it's been helpful to see what's going on in other schools. The training, the first one, of course, was primarily focused on the instructional shifts, which we in the Connecticut Technical High School system were already very familiar with, but it was still nice to see the reinforcement, and then to collaborate with colleagues from other districts has been helpful. And if I could just elaborate on what Kathy was saying, as in the past, the CAPT literacy standards were asking students to do what we called reader response, and really asking them to bring a personal approach to reading a text. So the prompt might be, well, how did you feel about this character? Who did this character remind you of? And as Kathy was saying, that we don't need to abandon that question, but it might be a starting point for a discussion, but then you would bring that question a little deeper too. So if a student says, this character, I felt that this character was very melancholy and sorrowful. Then we might ask a student, okay, where did you see that in the text? So question's okay, but then we ask the student, ground that interpretation that you just made, that observation you just made of the character in the text. Where did you see examples of that character being full of sorrow? And that's the key right there, is that not just, oh, I feel this, I feel that, okay. And then when a student can't ground it in the text, that's telling that student, I'm not quite dealing with the text anymore, am I? I'm sort of off here talking about something else that doesn't have to do with the material that I'm supposed to be learning right now. And so that's the exercise right there that keeps them text bound. That is a standard that we want to get them to.
And that key skill, text-based evidence, is a skill that any teacher in the technical high school system can support.
Absolutely. It's not something that just happens in an English classroom. The electrical instructor, when he's working with the textbook, wants those students to go back to that, make sure they understood what they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to wire this up. What did the manual say? I mean, that's really key.
And we also try to tell our teachers that textual evidence doesn't always have to be in written format. You could be teaching a lesson and the students say, well, I didn't like that character because I thought he was, mean. What page did you see that on? Everybody find an example from your text that shows how this character was mean. So it doesn't always have to be a written assignment. You can ask kids to prove and find text evidence in your everyday classroom just by asking a question.
Right.
That's certainly key. You are both instructional leaders in your school and in the district. I want to thank you for joining me today and for also helping our viewers understand a little bit more about the implementation of the Connecticut core standards in the technical high school system. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Technical school gave me an advantage. I was able to use a lot of my credits toward college classes, and the culinary experience prepared me for my career today.
Go to studentsucceedhere.com for more information.
Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion of the Connecticut core standards. In preparing our students for the Smarter Balance assessment, there is a structure or overall claim for students taking the assessment in grade 11. Students can demonstrate college and career readiness in English language arts and literacy. There are 4 claims or changes to English language arts in the Connecticut core standards that will prepare our students for this challenge. The 4 claims are reading, listening, writing, and research. Students will read more complex texts, both fiction and nonfiction. Students will learn to create written arguments using evidence from multiple texts. Students will learn to gather evidence to defend their opinions. Students will apply their literacy skills to math, science, social studies, and technical subjects. Students will need to read and write well across all subjects in preparation for college and careers. I would like to introduce our guests, Sue Loud, General Department Head from Eli Whitney Tech, and Robin Bader, General Department Head from Abbott Tech. Thank you both for joining me for this section.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's expound a little bit on those 4 claims that I just described. Robin, could you please start talking a little bit about the writing claim and what that means?
Okay, the writing claim, basically students will produce effective writing for a range of purposes and audiences. And to communicate effectively, students really need to understand what they are writing and why they are writing. To build a foundation for college and career readiness skills, students need to use writing as a way of offering support for their opinions, as you heard in the earlier segment, demonstrating their understanding of subject areas that they're studying in college, and conveying real and imagined experiences and events. They'll learn to appreciate that the key purpose of writing is to communicate effectively to external, sometimes unfamiliar sources or unfamiliar audiences. And they'll learn to begin to adapt the form and content of their writing to accomplish a particular goal. In the research claim, which Ms. Loud will be expounding upon, students really need to build their knowledge based on research. They'll be responding analytically and literally to its sources and informational sources. They'll be assessing source credibility and really going through and finding the most credible sources in terms of research and writing, incorporating technology. To meet these goals, students must have a range of writing experiences that are elaborated on through time, and also short writing assignments. We'll be looking at form and content, organization, giving students an opportunity to edit and revise, also spending a lot of time on conventions in the revision process, and rewriting, opportunities to rewrite, and using technology. Sue?
Okay, well, Dr. Torres, I'll talk a little bit more on Claim 4, which is research.
Okay.
So research is asking students to engage in research and inquiry and do investigative work. And then they're going to be analyzing and integrating and possibly presenting information. So the research claim has 3 target areas. And I'll just give you the keys on the targets. Target 2 focuses on analyzing information, which we know is breaking it down into parts. And the key in this claim is that student will use multiple sources, not just one, but multiple sources and different types of stimuli, charts, graphs, etc. The next target in the research is the evaluative target. And this is vital because it asks students to make judgments. And previously on CAPT, they didn't have to make judgments really about the credibility of the sources. And then the third target, which is actually number 4, is using evidence. And the critical piece in this target is not only using the best sources, but citing the sources and guarding against presenting evidence that someone else came up with as their own. So students really have to be mindful of giving credit where credit is due. So one thing that I've noticed about this research claim is that I think people misunderstand it at first. Some of the teachers were not quite sure. At first glance, when we think of research, you probably think back to when you wrote extensive papers that would be over a long period of time, and you would chunk it into note cards, and you would do MLA citations, and you would spend a lot of time in the library. Under the SBAC, the research can be brief, and then there's a little bit more of an extended piece. So it can be a brief research, and so that's maybe a little less intimidating to our students. Because the Common Core places such a focus or importance on writing to source material, this claim falls under the anchor standards for the writing. So you're going to see it infused across pieces, as Ms. Bader was saying. So they'll, on the computer adaptive portion, they'll see some research questions, as well as on the performance task when they're doing their full write. So again, everything we've heard here today, it's going to demand that students interact with the text at a much deeper level, and the detail, the fine detail that they're going to have to use in the thought process is critical. And I think Robin was alluding to that.
And part of the research piece comes in also when we're looking at interdisciplinary connections and students working both in the trade and academic area, possibly on a certain topic, looking at different research sources, evaluating those sources, and then bringing it all together in the writing process.
You mentioned two things that I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about. When you said credible sources, that's interesting for us as teachers. How can we help students discern what is a credible source? We hear about some specific websites that are very popular with our students. How can we help them develop that skill?
Robin, do you want to start with this?
Sure. I think in terms of having them think critically and read critically and evaluate the information that they have in front of them, and if they see conflicting information, realizing that they need to go and find a third source to confirm it. So we really need to get students reading critically. I think that's a huge skill that we need to focus in on. Assessing the accuracy of the information that they see, because if they just go to the first website that comes up and they don't look at who the website is, or they might look at it, but they need to really critically read the information on the website, and they need to make sure that the information they have is accurate.
Exactly.
So,
I think that with all the non-traditional sources, and I don't want to date myself, but it's a different world out there, and our students are technology natives. We all know that. And they may be getting information from a non-traditional source, whether it's, on the internet, is it on Instagram, is it on, Pinterest?
Pinterest, I think.
So those are all non-traditional sources. And you have citizen reporters. So what is the level of accuracy that's being reported in this information? And being able to discern that and make those judgments it's very critical. It's critical. They can't just take everything at face value.
And I think another key thing that we should probably bring up that SBAC also might be testing is what is plagiarism? What does it look like? And we really need to show our students what plagiarism is, what it's not, the difference between plagiarism and paraphrasing, and that's really something that is also a key thing we need to be focusing on in instruction.
Definitely.
Like Ms. Loud said earlier, give credit where credit is due.
Right.
Because that's also a skill that our students need to develop. Let me just ask you, I know that right now our technical high school students are going through the Smarter Balance assessment and the exercise. What are your initial impressions of that and any feedback that you can share with us?
My initial impressions after proctoring just yesterday, overwhelmingly positive. I think the test is that students are really going to have the ability to do more and to do it better with this new test. As I referenced, the ease of which they navigate the technological aspects, they are comfortable working on the computer. It lends itself to much more of a variety of tasks that I think are ultimately more meaningful than just the old-fashioned paper and pencil, capped, if you will. And I think that's going to be good for our students.
Thank you. What about you, Ms. Bader?
We haven't actually started the test yet in our building, but in terms of the students and their preparation, I think that they really are going to be in a very good place because we have been looking at the Common Core and incorporating it into lesson plans over the past 2 years. So I think that puts them in a much better place in terms of preparation. In terms of the complex texts that they're going to see, I think we've also been doing a really good job in incorporating those more complex texts into the classroom doing more of the close reading that is needed, and really focusing on the Tier 2 academic vocabulary that's going to be needed in order to take the test. So I think our students are in a really good place right now. And I think a lot of that is due to the professional development that we've gotten. I know, I think it was 2 years ago, I actually had the opportunity to see Karen Hess, and she's one of the creators of the DOK, which once again, we're trying to raise that level of awareness in students and critical thinking skills. And that was a wonderful experience for me. And I was able to bring that back. So I think a lot of the professional development that we've been involved in also has put us in a much better place to prepare our students.
Just to clarify for our viewers, when you say DOK, what does that mean? Because there might be some viewers that are not clear on that.
Okay, that's depth of knowledge, and basically what it does is it takes Bloom's taxonomy on one side, and then depth of knowledge goes to the right. So basically, we're trying to build our questioning techniques possibly for our students so that they are using those more critical thinking skills.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. Any final words or learnings that you want to share with teachers as we go through this transition phase in terms of implementing the Connecticut core standards and also assessing our students with the smarter balanced assessment?
I think our cadre of instructors in this system are outstanding, and we've spoken about the fact that we have these professional learning opportunities that many districts don't offer to their faculties. And so again, we're ahead. And I think that you're really seeing buildings come together and teachers come together to want to get their hands dirty and do this work and help our students achieve. And it seems to be going well, and I think it will continue on the positive.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And we were actually talking earlier about all the opportunities to collaborate as department heads, and we were talking about the wealth of information that's out there on the internet and different resources that we have. Connecticut Core, there are a number of resources that we've been able to go through during Module 1. Some of them were referenced. So I think, just reassuring people that there are so many resources out there, and that they really can just take some time and dig into them deeply and collaborate. And the more we collaborate with one another, I think that'll put us in a much better position as well.
Well, let me just thank you. Today we had 4 general department heads that joined us for this show, and it's really a testament to the work that all of you have been doing in terms of developing as instructional leaders and really leading the way in terms of this implementation. It's really a grassroots movement. We can certainly support you, but it makes a difference when it comes from the practitioners. So I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our district has provided multiple professional learning opportunities for school leaders and teachers to learn about the Connecticut core standards over the last 2 years. Through steering committee meetings, district-wide presentations on the Connecticut core standards and professional development days, and during department head seminars, and most recently through participating in the State Department of Education's Professional Learning System Module offerings. The Professional Learning System Model has identified 5 professional development days for teams of teacher coaches to come together to learn more about the Connecticut core standards. These offerings include understanding the instructional shifts, using data to plan instruction, and aligning instruction to our curricula for the remainder of this year. Our district has identified teacher coaches representing language arts, mathematics, STEM, social studies, and our trades across 4 regions representing all of our technical high schools. There is still much learning to take place, and we welcome your feedback and suggestions.
The Connecticut Technical High School system gave me the skills I use on the job every day and taught me organization and critical thinking, things you can't teach in books.
I never thought I was college material, but my teachers kept telling me I was. After getting my bachelor's degree, master's degree, and working toward my PhD, I guess they were right.
After graduating from CTHSS, our students have what it takes to succeed in whichever path they choose. Apply today at studentsucceedhere.com.
Thank you to Mr. Ken Simon and the Cheney Tech Media Production Program. I would like to issue a challenge to our teachers and students who are watching this show. I so enjoy visiting our schools and programs and learning from each of you about the exciting things that are taking place. But I also recognize that I might have missed some things along the way. I invite students to write to me and tell me why I should visit your classroom. I will select 1 or 2 schools to visit before the end of the school year, and I will be accompanied by the Cheney Tech Media Production crew. These visits will be the topic of our last show for the school year. Looking forward to hearing from you. Until next time, from the Digital Media Production Studio A at Cheney Tech. Hasta la vista.